Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm really excited tonight because we have a great guest with us. He's been an actor, an author, reporter, marathon runner. I mean, the guy does it all. He's just as talented as they come, and we're going to discuss a lot of great things tonight, and I really look forward to it. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Nelson Aspen. And Nelson, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
Thanks for having me, Mike. See, you can accomplish all those things if you just live long enough.
So, Nelson, I'm curious about this. I feel that I do like 3 miles every day myself, and I feel like that's a lot. You've ran marathons, and I mean, you've ran a ton of them. Just talk to me about, like, how did you have time to fit that all in? Because you got to really train for that stuff.
Yeah, I was an aerobics instructor for many years, which is kind of what I was doing while I was trying to make it as an actor in the early days. And my popularity as an aerobics instructor led me to be hired to train Princess Diana in that hot new workout of the late 80s, step. So off I went to London with my step. I will circle back to marathon running. I became a TV personality because of training Princess Diana. Pardon the sirens; it's just another night in New York City here. And while I was, launching my TV career, I always kept up with I kept up as an aerobics instructor. It forced me to exercise. But teaching aerobics, obviously very different from marathon running. And one day I was living in Hollywood at the time, and I went into some place and there were brochures at the register. It said, "You can train to run a marathon. We'll train you to run a marathon. If you raise money for this charity, you'll get a free trip to Hawaii and you'll run the Honolulu Marathon." And this was 2001. And I thought, oh, well, I can't believe I could run a marathon. And it was the Jeff Galloway method. If anybody knows running, they probably know the Jeff Galloway method. If you would aspire to run a marathon, I highly recommend it. It's establishing your pace, your comfortable pace, which you can maintain your heart rate, and taking walk breaks. So for me, it was an easy 10-minute mile. That's not a fast pace. Run 10 minutes, walk a minute. Run 10 minutes, walk a minute. And 20 marathons later and 25 years later, I'm still doing it that way. So I'm blessed with good joints, but yeah, it's been wonderful. And I decided 20 marathons was enough. After 20, I just am now a recreational runner, period.
And Nelson, what I think is really remarkable about it is each marathon you've ran, there's always a cause behind it. You've done Wheels on Meals, St. Jude's Hospital, things like that. So, I mean, usually whenever you've ran a race, it always goes to great charitable causes, correct?
Well, I think almost all of them, yes. And as much as I'd like to say I'm altruistic, it does motivate you if you're doing it with a purpose, rather, and that purpose, sometimes it's fundraising. And after doing so many, I also decided that it was going to be a travel aspect for me. So I was not fast. I was never fast enough to run Boston. So I had to let that dream go. But I would like to, I wanted to see the world. So that way, I got to go and do the Florence Marathon and the Bermuda Marathon and the San Francisco Marathon a few times. And I think my favorite was actually the Catalina Trail Marathon. And that was probably the hardest one I ever did because it was all off-road. And you're just sort of out there in the wilderness following a path of lime that somebody had set down. And it was exquisite. So yeah, every time I still go running, I run about 100 miles a month, but my marathon days are in the rear view mirror.
Nelson, whenever somebody is starting out, whether they're doing acting, they're writing a book, whatever it might be, there's always somebody that impacts us, why we do this. For me, I was a big Bob Costas fan. That's why I got into this. I loved, guys from ESPN, things like that. But you were mentored by an iconic daytime actress in Mary Stewart, and it doesn't get any better than her. And she was also, I believe, your coach. So talk about that a little bit, because she really played a big part in your career. And
She
I think
really
it was
did.
special for you when you wrote the Bible on her character's long history.
Yeah, I grew up, I had a grandmother of a certain age, and she was of a generation where you watched one soap opera while you were cleaning up from breakfast, then the next one came on while you were doing your ironing. Then the whole day revolved around her soap operas. And her favorite one was Search for Tomorrow, which starred Mary Stewart. And as a young actor, that was my first TV job, was on Search for Tomorrow. And I was delighted to be working with the great Mary Stewart, who had the distinction of doing what I don't think any other actor could do. Not Laurence Olivier, not Meryl Streep. She played one character for 35 years and always managed to keep it interesting, which is, that talk about an acting feat. So yeah, she and I became friends, and we were quite an odd couple. She was much, much older than I, but she had a very fabulous, glamorous existence here in New York City, and I was just a teenager starting out. And she took me under her wing, and she gave me odd jobs to make pocket money. But more importantly, she would exchange not only acting lessons and singing lessons, but lifestyle lessons. She taught me how to mix a martini. She taught me how to make an omelet. She bought me an omelet pan because she said every bachelor should know how to make an omelet. Because if you have leftovers in the fridge and a couple of eggs, you'll never go hungry if you know how to make an omelet. And she just taught me about life in ways that your parents don't. Your parents are there as guardians and to rear you. But Mary really just taught me about living. And it was a great gift, and we remained friends until her passing. And I think of her every time I make an omelet, or every time I hand sign a card, which I still do because I think it's an important courtesy and art form. And I just published my 9th book. This one's a novel, and she taught me a lot about writing and discipline, because it was the early or mid 80s. And she got her first word processor. She didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it. I was a good typist on a typewriter, the good old fashioned clickety click, ding. But yeah, so we put her word processor together and learned together. But she taught me about writing, and she's still an integral part. I did my memoirs last year, and it surprised me how major a part she played in my life. Then it's wonderful to recognize those people when they're in your life. You don't want to wait until they're gone.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, she was as iconic to daytime TV as anybody. And, I always said this, Nelson, my childhood favorite actor, and he still is to this day, is Michael J. Fox. I just love him, love his work. And this is what's so cool about your career, is the different people you've got to meet, because your favorite actress as a child was Carol Lindley. And coincidentally enough, you got to meet her, and it turned into a lifelong friendship. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I keep outliving all these great ladies. But Carol and I fell in love with Carol when I was 8 years old and saw the Poseidon Adventure. Now, what's led us together today is my new book, Kindred Spirits, a Titanic Tale, which is about my connection to the Titanic. We'll talk about that. But that the whole key to kicking off my fascination with ships, especially disasters that happen to ships, started with the great movie, The Poseidon Adventure. And Carol had a major role in that, best remembered for singing the Oscar-winning song, The Morning After. And my parents, who were such remarkable people, decided that if I was that crazy about Carol Lindley, I should meet her. And my mom took me to see my first Broadway show because Carol Lindley was in it. And then my dad arranged for Carol and me to have lunch together because they knew I wanted to be an actor, and they made it something so that Carol could sort of not coach me, but inspire me and give me a little pep talk kind of situation. And I was 15 at the time, and we became lifelong friends. And then when I moved to Hollywood, and I lived in Hollywood for 22 years, we had lunch 2 or 3 times a month. We spent holidays together. She knew my family. We were close. And then I went on this amazing Poseidon. As she got older, the Poseidon cast members started doing special screenings. It sort of took on this camp film role. And so we started going to Poseidon Adventure screenings and autograph shows. And I became friends with all the other cast members from the Poseidon Adventure. It was very strange and very heady for a young person. And yeah, she passed away in 2019, but we were close as can be right to the very end. And I think it's important to say yes to these kinds of opportunities. That's not a usual thing for a young guy to be hanging out with these older ladies. And it's not like I was a gigolo or an escort or anything. We just clicked and we enjoyed each other's company, and it opened the world in so many ways for me.
Right. And it seems like to me, Nelson, even at a young age, your work ethic was definitely there. I mean, because what's really cool and really unbelievable is the fact that you graduated high school at age 16 and you were valedictorian. And listen, a lot of kids nowadays, it's either 17 or 18 years old they graduate. The fact that you were a young 16-year-old and you were valedictorian, that says a lot about the work you must have put in as a young kid.
That's also OCD. I am a proud owner of obsessive compulsive disorder, and always have been since childhood. But I was one of those strange kids that liked homework, that liked extra assignments, that took that on. And I wasn't just doing school. I was doing theater and local commercials. I was a professional child, so I was working, even though I was growing up outside of Philadelphia. There was still work available. And I liked to work. I enjoyed performing, and my parents liked that I liked it. And I do. I have a tremendous work ethic, and I don't sleep much, and I like to keep busy. And as soon as I finish one book, I'm already halfway through writing the next one.
Right. That really is unbelievable. And Nelson, we're going to get to your latest book, but interestingly enough, you've had like quite a career, especially with writing books. And I think of one that was really popular. It was Let's Dish Up a Dinner Party. And I think that came out about 20 years ago. And man, I'll tell you, it got a lot of great reviews. US Weekly named it the book as one of its hot picks. So, I mean, talk about that book, because that's a really cool book. And I mean, it just seems like to me that when you write, you keep thinking of things as you're writing, which makes that a lot of fun as well, because it doesn't seem like work. It seems like a passion where you just enjoy what you're writing.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a machine. This new book is my 9th, I think, if I count correctly. And I was I'm going to mention another older lady now. I was very inspired by Jackie Collins, because Jackie Collins not only wrote about Hollywood glitz and glamour and showbiz and celebrity, and it was very steamy and racy and adult situations, but if you want to turn your nose up at that, you also have to acknowledge the fact that people loved her books. They were page turners. They were highly entertaining, huge bestsellers. And I got to know Jackie over the years. The first time I met her, I was working in a bookstore. I always tell people, like, why do you want to stay home and just zoom your life away? Get out there and do odd jobs, like teaching aerobics or working in a restaurant or working in a bookstore, because that's how you meet people, the people that change your lives. And I was working in a bookstore in Hollywood, and Jackie Collins' limousine pulled up outside. She gets out and like, wow, there's Jackie Collins. She's in her leopard jacket, the big hair, and she pulls out a suitcase full of books. And she comes into the bookstore and she goes over to the fiction wall and she starts taking inventory of what there should be. And then she goes to the manager. You need more copies of this one, and you don't have any copies of that one. And why isn't this one selling? But she took charge. And then over the years, as I got to know her and I interviewed her and we would hang out together, but she taught me about the business. It's not enough just to write a book, let alone a good book, but you got to sell it. you got to sell that book. You got to be willing to get your hands dirty with cash if necessary. What's the point of writing a book if nobody reads it? It's like the tree falling in the forest. You got to sell your own book. And if it's not a book, then it's your whatever it is you're selling. You got to market yourself. Otherwise, what's the point? So she taught me a lot about, and she was always very charming and flattering and a little sexy. Even as when she got older, she was still just as flirtatious and vivacious as she was at any point in her career. And I try and keep that up. You know, I'm now well into my 60s, but I wanna still feel the exuberance and the excitement that I've always felt. And I think I do.
Right. And, you talk about being in your 60s, but another book you wrote, it actually coincided with you turning 50. My prime time middle age is only the beginning. And I thought that was unique because basically what you're telling people is just because you're 50 doesn't mean that your life is half over. It just means your life is still beginning. So talk about that a little bit.
If only I could go back to 50. It seems like yesterday. But that was another like I did not intend to just keep writing books, and I was planning my 50th birthday, and I thought, okay, I'm going to turn 50. I'm going to have an extravaganza, and I was literally flying back to LA from New York when the publisher of the previous book said, "We want another book from you. It can be anything you want." And I was like, well, I'm so busy planning my 50th birthday. In addition to working, the only other extracurricular thing I could swing was planning this extravagant 50th birthday party. And that's what gave me the idea. Well, I'll write a book about celebrating your milestones. It started, the nucleus of the idea was the birthday party, but it became a whole book about embracing middle age in all aspects, whether that's your career or your fitness or your diet or your sex life or your outlook. And I went through and I found all sort of notable people that were born within a year or two of myself who seem very young and vital. So now they're in their 60s too. People like Brad Pitt and George Clooney and Matt Damon and Juliette Moore and Jodie Foster. And you don't think of them as old. Somebody said to me the other day about Meryl Streep being in her 70s or around 70, and it's like, man, when did that happen? How did she get to be that old? But I guess she must be. If I'm this old, she must be that old.
Yeah, but the thing of it is, Nelson, so many actors and people in general. 70 now is young. It really is.
I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, but it really is. But this latest book that you've written, and it really is so inspiring, and it's called Kindred Spirits, and it really is about the connection you had with Titanic victim Milton Long. So talk about what inspired you to do this book, and talk about Milton and what he went through going through all that.
Yeah, well, ever since the Poseidon Adventure back in 1972, I have had this fascination with nautical disasters. The Andrea Doria, the Lusitania, and the granddaddy of them all, of course, is the Titanic. And I'm not one to necessarily believe in the metaphysical woo-woo kind of stuff. However, when dreams, you can't control your dreams. If you have a certain dream that speaks to you, or a series of coincidences, like my name is Nelson, I make a living with my voice and my brain, so I don't think I mumble my words. My name is Nelson, and yet my entire life people have called me Milton, which is not a common name in this day and age. But a whole series of things came up, and I realized that I had a connection with this one particular Titanic passenger who perished on the night of April 15th, 1912. And it was before the internet, so there was no way I could Google who this person was. I actually had to go to the library. I had to look around in bookstores. And it took me decades to figure out who this person was that I felt a connection to. And then when his name was Milton, I was like, well, that's weird. People have been calling me Milton for years. And I've always sort of tucked this story away. It even connected me to oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard, who discovered the wreck of Titanic back in the 80s. And I got in touch with him because I wanted to be a part of the expedition to retrieve some artifacts from Titanic. And he called me Milton. I got him on the phone, and I'm holding for hold for Dr. Ballard, and he got on the phone and he went, "Yeah, Milton." And I was like, "All right, man, there's something to this." So Milton died when he was 29. He was a man of privilege. He was single, childless. He had been on holidays. He was lost. I know he'd gone to Harvard and Columbia, but he'd never graduated. And as a hyper student myself, sort of a chronic overachiever when it comes to school, I thought, well, that's strange. Why wouldn't he have ever finished school? He was coming onto the Titanic after a holiday in San Moritz, doing winter sports. So I thought maybe he died at 29. I sort of discovered who he was when I was around 29. I thought maybe in some cosmic way, I'm picking up the baton for the life he didn't get to lead. Maybe there was something certainly repressive about the Edwardian society, and he didn't get to, and he was traveling alone. It was a very, very sort of sad story. And the Titanic did no favors to its survivors. It was such a catastrophic, cataclysmic, world-changing event. It was 1912's version of 9/11. I mean, it was unbelievable. So even if you had survived Titanic, chances are you would be dealing with survivor's guilt or post-traumatic stress. Like there were a lot of suicides from Titanic survivors. It was not just surviving was not the key to a happy ending at all. So Kindred Spirits is a historical fantasy. I play it for entertainment because that's what Jackie Collins taught me. So I've imagined, what if Milton, after that terrible, terrible night, his life cut short, wakes up, he goes underwater, the next thing he knows, he's in the body of a young man living in Manhattan who is far from repressed, who is far from introverted. And so you've set up this odd couple situation, two souls, one body, two very different personalities, and they have to solve a mystery about, you'll see in the book, but there's a mystery involving someone else on the Titanic, what happened to them, how it unfolded, and it becomes a buddy story between these two souls sharing a body. And you do get to interact with historical characters from the Titanic. I'm a Titanic enthusiast of the first order. I've been researching it my entire life. I actually host a podcast called Titanic Talk, which it explores all aspects of Titanic. And I do guest speaking engagements on cruise ships and theaters about Titanic. So it felt like a very natural next step for me to write a book. And I wanted to honor Milton. I'm the only person that ever seemed to know about Milton. He's a real peripheral character. Everybody knows Molly Brown, and everybody knows Captain Smith and Bruce Ismay and John Jacob Astor. But Milton Long has really been a footnote in history. And now I'm giving him his moment.
Right. And the thing too, Nelson, you had so much expertise on this and you researched it so much that you actually helped an actress by the name of Alexandra Boyd get a part in the 97 film, because didn't you write like her coaching and audition material for her? So I mean,
she's now my Titanic Talk podcast co-host. And she back in 96, we were very good friends. And we made friends in the 80s. And when I make a friend, I keep a friend. And so we had both moved to Hollywood, and she was auditioning for James Cameron's Titanic. And he wanted for the auditions for people to write a monologue from the point of view of someone on board the Titanic. Well, of course, again, there was not a lot of internet in the 1990s. In 1996, maybe if you were lucky, you had a dial-up. But I had a library full of Titanic books. So I helped her because she didn't know anything about Titanic. She got a part. And now 25 years later, she's made a beautiful documentary about her experience of working on the film. And I appear in the documentary telling the story of Milton and how I came to help her win her role. and that created the podcast. So there's something to be said about that old cliche of do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And as hard as I've worked and as long as I've worked, the Titanic has always been an extracurricular hobby for me. And now I've got over 50 podcast episodes. I'm traveling the world talking about Titanic, and I've got my own Titanic book. It's extraordinary. I never would have imagined at any stage of my life that would happen.
And Nelson, you did so much research on it, because at the end of the day, you have to dedicate hours and hours to really, write a book like this. You can't just like read one book and be like, okay, I know what I'm doing. You have to really research. You have to talk to anybody who might have been around that time or whatever. But the thing I wanted to know is, by all the research you did and you saw the movie, how accurate was James Cameron's version of the movie on the real life situation? I mean, you could kind of tell by what you researched. I mean, do they get it spot on? I mean, obviously the thing with Rose and Jack is fictional, but I mean, do they get the other events spot on?
I wouldn't say spot on. However, Cameron himself was such a Titaniac, as I call Titanic fans. He was so into it that he was meticulous about the art direction and the wardrobe and getting the details right. So I would say the production design is spot on. If you look at the costumes, the etiquette, the I don't know, just the detail, the artistic detail of his film is spot on. If you want to watch a film about Titanic that actually tells you more about the class system, the whole sort of women and children first aspect, the better movie for accuracy to me is a British film based on Walter Lord's excellent novel, A Night to Remember. And A Night to Remember, it's black and white. The special effects are certainly not as fancy as James Cameron's, but but there's no fiction. In A Night to Remember, it's really telling the story of the real people, and almost it feels like in real time. It's almost like watching a documentary. And interestingly, in Cameron's film, once you've seen Night to Remember, you'll look at Cameron's film differently, because many of the shots that Cameron uses are from A Night to Remember. And I don't think he wasn't plagiarizing it. I think it was his way of honoring what came before. And so if you look at it that way, it's beautiful.
Right. And, there's always been theories, Nelson, especially the involvement of the popularity of the films, obviously the tragic implosion of the Titanic and things like that. I mean, what is your feeling on like the films? And like, there've been several films. I mean, obviously the 97 version, for people today, they're going to remember that one more, but you've seen probably all the films. What is your like?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because one of the survivors was a silent film actress. And the first thing she did when she got back to dry land was they made a silent movie version of her experience on the Titanic, and she actually wore the clothes that she was rescued in. So there have been Titanic dramatizations since 1912. That's nothing new. People want to tell the Titanic story. What I find remarkable, and I talk about it a lot because it's mystifying to me, is the way the Titanic story is romanticized. Unlike any other disaster, like nobody's doing a Romeo and Juliet story about 9/11 or the Challenger explosion or a tsunami washing over a country. There's something about Titanic, and I suspect it's because it really was the end of an era. When that ship went under, the Edwardian era was effectively finished. They thought money could protect them. They thought status could protect them. They thought technology. They thought that ship was unsinkable. They dared to plow through the ice fields because nothing could touch them. Nature couldn't touch them. they learned a painful lesson, and we are still learning that lesson. You mentioned the submersible that a year or so ago imploded while going down to visit the Titanic. That's still man's hubris over, like, oh well, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm wealthy, or I have the technology, and no one is clever enough to outwit Mother Nature.
Yeah. And it's very true, Nelson. And it's crazy because every time you hear the little clips, especially like, the beautiful song that Celine Dion wrote and performed, you always hear the little highlights in the background, and you hear, so this is the ship that's unsinkable. And they say it is. Like, it's just a shame, like, that something so catastrophic like that happened. I mean, there's terrible things that happen in the world, and that's one of them for sure. Um, but interestingly enough, Nelson, way before you ever wrote this great book that you wrote, you've been speaking on TV shows, radio shows. People have had you leave quotes in their newspapers. And I mean, again, you host this podcast. So, I mean, people really take your knowledge and they take it as face value. And that's got to make you feel good, because what it tells them is that, or what it tells you is that they realize that you put a lot of heart and passion into this. You didn't just half-ass it. You basically researched this for years and years, and you know what you're talking about.
Well, it's a big responsibility. I spent 30 years as a journalist for morning television, and I've interviewed every celebrity under the sun, but I've also reported on breaking news ranging from celebrity suicides and deaths and arrests and divorces and births and hurricanes and I mean, you name it. It's something you take very close to heart. It's a huge responsibility. And I seem to report on a lot of death. I do a lot of celebrity obituaries. One of my very first celebrity interview back in the early 90s was with Betty White. And I always told my boss, when that terrible day comes that Betty White goes, you make sure no matter what time of the day or night it is, I'm the reporter that will do it. I have the footage, I have the knowledge, I have, she and I had a relationship. But even if I hadn't, I find it important to be able to give the audience perspective, analysis, beyond just, here are the facts of the story. I'm a storyteller and I'm a communicator, and I want to be able to offer that analysis and perspective to put it into the right frame. And especially doing morning television, which I did 5 days a week for 30 years, that's a very intimate time of day. People are in bed or getting the kids ready for school, or they're walking around in their underwear. It's private, personal time. But yet they see you on the television day after day after day. Oh, I'll take my kids to the bus stop as soon as I see Nelson. You stay on a very strict schedule. I was on at the same time every hour. You literally could set your clock by the show. And you develop this strange and wonderful intimacy with the audience. They feel like they know you. And when you see them on the street, they don't get starstruck, and it's not like seeing a movie star. It's a familiarity. It's like seeing a member of the family. And that's not only very, very flattering, it's a huge responsibility. And what a privilege. What a privilege. And I'm really honored that I've made my career that way.
Yeah. And Nelson, I mean, this would make me feel good. And it would make me feel good in the sense that when somebody's cutting back your work and they do it for whatever reason, obviously budget cuts play a part, but it seems like when people are successful, they're a victim of their own success. And Sunrise decided they were only going to have you be on once a day as opposed to twice a day. And within the 3 or 4 hour telecast, there were over 7,000 phone calls demanding that you be back in your normal spot. I mean, when you heard that, that must have like, you know, in one sense, like you were down when they told you they were going to make it once a day. And then you must have just felt like, wow, you know, this is why you got to love what you do, because you really do impact people. And that's the biggest thing, because 7,000 calls, you know, I always said if I had 5 people that, you know, were fans of my show, that's great. 7,000 calls shows you that so many people love your work.
Yeah, you know, I that rings a bell. I don't remember that story, but I'm sure it must be Googleable somewhere. And but certainly more than once, the audience saved my job. It's the nature of television. I mean, that's you know, that's the big expression. That's showbiz. You can't take anything really personally. It's just that's the nature of the business. But there were more than a dozen times over the years where, you know, they're always looking to change something and everybody wants to do the entertainment news. So it's the easiest thing in the world to replace your entertainment reporter because everybody's got their hand up. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. But not everybody knows how to do it. There's an art to there's an art to interviewing. There's an art to having your bank of knowledge and being able to review films and speak knowledgeably of the history of the entertainment industry. But yeah, and ultimately, after at the end of this 30th year that I was working every day, and that was all through COVID, and I was broadcasting for 4 hours a day through my phone, just like I'm talking to you now, right through the phone, right from my home, COVID. And I hated it. You know, I did it because we had to keep the show on the air. But then when COVID was over, I was like, I got to go back to the studio. I don't want to be the engineer. I don't want to hear sirens going by the window. I want to be back in the studio where I can be, you know, focused and have a support system. And funny, they got used to having it on the phone because doing it over the phone is a heck of a lot cheaper than doing it from the studio, very much cheaper than renting a studio every day. So we sort of agreed to disagree. And I was like, all right, time for me to do some other things. And so I've been singing and winning awards. I've been writing and winning awards. Who knew? That would never have happened if I had stayed in the comfortable daily role. And it's just another one of those cliches that you got to get out of your comfort zone and not get complacent and too comfortable. You know, I would never have had this. Kindred Spirits would not exist if I were still doing the daily grind of morning TV.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, it just shows like how talented you are. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mean, think about it. Like when your career started, you'd really hoped to be a big time actor, and you did some films, you did some guest spots and things like that. But I'll tell you, Nelson, I mean, everything else you've done, like being an author, being a performer, you know, being a host, doing all these different things. And now, like this podcast that's really popular, and just seeing like the impact it's having. I mean, this Titanic book, I really believe people are not going to want to put it down because it just looks so fascinating. I mean, it just goes to show that even though like what might be your first dream, which obviously had to be acting opened a lot more doors for you, and you got to show your writing skills and show other skills. So, I mean, like that doesn't happen without acting, but it goes to show that you didn't need to just be an actor to be successful in life. All these other things you're doing are proof of that.
TV gave me most of the opportunity I've enjoyed in my adult life. And you know, when I was starting out, I thought, oh, I'll just like, you know, I'll just be on a soap opera for the rest of my life. They can just make me the, you know, like the nice guy, and I'll come out at Christmas. I'll carry the turkey, and I'll just, you know, I'll have a steady job. All I wanted to, you know, was to have a steady job. And there is nothing steady about show business. But I'm a worker. You know, I'll do something. I don't know what I'll do next. But I know that I've got Kindred Spirits to spread the word. My memoirs, it was just supposed to be one book, Dancing Between the Raindrops. It turned into have a sequel. And then I decided the story really isn't over. It's a trilogy. If I want to take it up to present day, there needs to be a third book. So the third book is written. and that will come out later this year. And we're cooking up a really kind of cool thing where if you get all 3 books, we'll have a little cardboard box set so you can have all 3 books. And I'm in the process of recording the audio books for them. So I'm a full-time novelist. Who knew? I never would have dreamed that. And I couldn't have planned it. I couldn't. And I love planning. I love making a plan and sticking to it. But I certainly could never have foreseen this.
Right. And Nelson, I mean, this podcast, I mean, you get to talk about kindred spirits and, you know, all that stuff. And, you know, you get to like go back and kind of, you know, give your insight and things like that. And I mean, it's got to be fun too when you could talk about something you love, because sometimes, you know, people, when they do radio shows, they got to sometimes talk about things they don't necessarily love, you know, especially politics. But you get to talk about something that you are very passionate about. And it's like the old saying goes, it's not work if you love what you do, and you love what you do. So, I mean, it's never work for you.
And what's interesting, you mentioned politics, because I spent so many decades on the celebrity news beat. And for the last year, in the lead up to the presidential election, a British show had asked me if I would like to start doing weekly commentary about the US presidential race. So on GB News, I've been appearing for over a year now, every Saturday morning. And it had started out being just commentary on the race for president. But after all those months, I had established a rapport with the hosts and, more importantly, with the audience. And so even after the election was over, they've kept me on. And so now I have a weekly segment where I discuss the week in US politics. And, you know, it's fun for me because it's different. It's a whole different cast of characters. But you know what? It's really not that different, because it's kind of like show business. You know, when I say characters, I mean, look at the characters that we have in politics. It's really no different than talking about Hollywood. It's just now I'm talking about Washington. And, you know, everybody's a critic, right? So a few people who have seen me on the show will say, oh, he's a showbiz guy. What does he know about politics? I'm like, you know what? I can also chew gum and walk at the same time. You are, you know, some of us are capable of doing 2 things. We don't just have to be pigeonholed into one thing. So I highly recommend that to anyone listening, no matter how much you love or are comfortable doing what you're doing, do something else on the side too, because you can, and you might just like it better, or meet somebody new, or have a new experience.
Exactly. You know, Nelson, the recording of this interview, of course, is today, Tuesday, March 18th. So if I'm not mistaken, Kindred Spirits came out on sale today, right? Today was the first day.
It's hit the press, baby. So if it's not at your local bookstore, you need to be like Jackie Collins and give them hell and say, where is Kindred Spirits? A Titanic Tale by Nelson Aspen. But rest assured, it's on Amazon, it's on barnesandnoble.com. You can get it in book form, you can get it in Kindle. As soon as I get around to it, I'll record the audio, because I don't want AI doing that job for me. I'll do it myself, thanks. But I'll get around to it. But don't wait for that. It'll take too long. Get the book or the Kindle, and I think everybody's going to really enjoy it, because you don't need to be interested in Titanic per se, but it is a fun little ghost story with a dose of history in there for added measure.
And I have to believe that you're going to make the rounds, like with this book, go to different cities and kind of discuss it.
That's right. And I just got off the maiden voyage of Cunard's new Queen Anne liner. It was their very first voyage, around the world voyage. And I joined them from New York to Miami, speaking about Titanic, my career, etc. And I will be launching my book tour on the anniversary of the Titanic sinking. The weekend before April 14th, I'll be on board the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California, for the Titanic Weekend. From there, I'll go to Los Angeles on the anniversary of the sinking. And all of this is on nelsonaspen.com, all of my travel details. But I will be traveling around the country, culminating in May, going to London and then Belfast, which is where Titanic was built. So I will be at the Titanic Museum, Hotel and Distillery to be right there where the ship of dreams was born. And that's going to be, I know, very, very moving. And it's like, you know what? I feel like I'm doing something for Milton. All the 113 years later, Milton is getting some recognition.
And it's unbelievable it's been that long. But folks, I really encourage everybody to buy this book. This man is a talented writer and you won't be disappointed. So I really hope that everybody will go out and get this book, because I'm going to be honest, the books are always so much better than the films. That's just my opinion, but they really are. But Nelson, I want to thank you for giving me some time today. It was a real honor for me. I followed your work over the years. You are just a credit to not only, entertainment, but just life in general. I mean, you inspire so many people, and there's no agenda with you. You just enjoy what you do, love what you do, and you make the most of it. And I really do applaud you for that. And thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And it's kind of you to say. I'm very grateful, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. The one and only Nelson Aspen. And, when you talk about people who make an impact, make a difference, inspire day in and day out, this young man has done that throughout his career. I mean, he has done so many great things. Look at this new book, Kindred Spirits. I mean, I think we're going to laugh. I think, we're probably not going to laugh, but we're going to cry. We're going to,
there's some laughs in there. Don't worry.
There's
some adult situations and some laughs too. So you will be entertained. I am first and foremost an entertainer.
And you will not be disappointed with this. I encourage everybody, like I said, go out and get this book, because I think you would be shortchanging yourself if you don't, because it's going to be a great read. I mean, look at all the other books he's written. I mean, he is phenomenal, and he's a credit, like I said, not only to entertainment, but to life and society in general. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.